Meanwhile, at the lab. All right, doctors, I make a point of arriving promptly when the words weapons breakthrough are found on my reports, doubly so when it's accompanied with, for your eyes only. What do you have for me? Admiral Cistern walks into the weapon testing range to Dr. Samuel, smiling. The good doctor gestures to a large table filled with blueprints and numerous examples of what looks to be a bandolier of chrome grenades and child's toy, covered in hazard tape yellow and black with numerous small balls around it and a conspicuous red button on the side. Sir, we have 2 excellent weapons completed and several in prototype stages. A stunning and disarming weapon known as the Pulsing Ablator Grenade, or PAG, and the Mass Chaos and Area Denial Weapon, the BPB, or Bouncing Plasma Bombs. Our prototypes are the Bomb Spray, the Screamer, the Line Pulse, and the Thermal Staff, renames pending as testing pans out. Describe these weapons to me. Admiral Cistern orders, and Dr. Samuel simply smiles. I'll be giving you a demonstration of the PAG and BPB in a few moments. As for the rest, the bomb spray is us attempting to create plasma in a more jelly-like state and glue it to a target, then have it remotely detonated at will. We're still working a lot of kinks out though, so it's not one to hold your breath on. Dr. Samuel explains, holding up the blueprints for what looks to be a small handheld device with numerous canisters on it. Limited ammunition. But plasma is created from agitated gases in the atmosphere. I see. It does sound interesting, though. He regards as he reads the blueprints and sees that the methods to make the plasma jelly is currently quite slow, and each container slowly produces more. Switching them out is to simply extend how much you can have at once. Very much so, sir. The Screamer, on the other hand, we're just working through some durability issues. It's a powerful anti-armor weapon that is effectively a megaphone amped up to ludicrous levels. The sound waves become capable of finding fractal-level faults in whatever equipment they encounter and ripping them apart through sheer vibration. Unfortunately, the Screamer is also vulnerable to this damage, and it's ludicrously difficult to shield the soldier activating it from the echo of their attack. It's possible, but it takes such a long time to set up that you effectively have a guarded position to begin with. A lot of kinks to work out, but we've got a lot of good ideas how to do it. Dr. Samuel explains, holding up the next set of blueprints for Admiral Cistern's perusal. True enough, it resembles a megaphone in shape, if not function. There are numerous proposed methods for better directing the sound or preventing the damaging echoes, but several are crossed out and a few have question marks. It's very much a work in progress. Interesting. The line pulse is? Admiral Cistern asks, setting down the blueprints and accepting the next set. Very much a work in progress, however, it's a cutting-edge shockwave that should have purposes in both construction and combat. Long story short, it's the knife with the longest reach. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get that reach very far. We're using a magnetic bottle-style solution for the plasma to keep its shape, but the natural magnetic fields of the planet and from nearby technology causes it to dissipate at random past the first 5 meters. And if you're not rocking a shotgun, you may as well just pull an actual knife to cut things at that range. Meaning this device is better suited to work as a cutting torch at the moment, Admiral Cistern says as he considers the odd device. It seems to unfold to project its blade, fairly cumbersome looking in a fight and an easy target. Perhaps it was best that it had more industrial than offensive use. Still, he had been proven wrong, and a surprise weapon where there was previously only construction equipment would be a wonderful thing to have. Now the last of our weapons in testing is the Thermal Staff. It was inspired by the soldier Vernon Shea's final round performance in the Shellcracker tournament. Very clever of him to strip the local heat energy and concentrate it to both freeze his opponents and give himself a large amount of power to work with. Dr. Samuel explains, holding up the next blueprint. This device's outline resembles more a pair of rifles joined at the butt rather than a proper staff, but it is fairly clear what it's meant to do. As you can see, this weapon is made to facilitate complete thermal transfers. Suck all the heat out of an area to freeze it nearly solid, then shoot it back out at your leisure. Could that not be done with just half the weapon? In theory, sir, we're also trying to add a bit more crowd control onto it. Make it into a proper fire and ice thrower. The opposite side of the staff will build up hydration from the local environment, or be provided canisters. Either works. Then this hydration could be primed to cause a massive blast of steam in an area, or frozen solid to allow greater crowd control. It could also be extremely effective firefighting equipment if it can remove thermal energy and then dampen things down to prevent reignition. Admiral Cistern notes to himself, "Oh yes, when we get all the bugs worked out with the energy storage and redirection, we'll have a solid replacement for chemical fire extinguishers. Perhaps not as a replacement so much as additional equipment. Our own experiences predispose me to desiring backups and redundancies." "Yes, that makes a great deal of sense, sir. Anyways, you know what we're working on next and the issues. Now it's time for the main event, the PAG and BPB display. The PAG, as I said before, is mostly crowd control. The worst it will do is give someone a sunburn or maybe mess up their vision for a few weeks. But it will shatter personal shields, overheat all forms of weapon and armor, and serve as a hell of a distraction. We could send these into the fields more or less immediately." "Interesting. Break it down, Doctor. How is this used?" he says, and Dr. Samuel holds up the bandolier. "Quite simple, sir. Put on the belt, pluck off the grenade, and toss. The grenade uses two parts of technology we found out here of immense use, and combines them in ways that we have yet to see for ourselves. But I do not doubt that some clever soul has their own variant." "Keep going. I like to understand things fully," Admiral Cistern remarks as he clips on the bandolier. "There is a method of laser weapon attack called pulsing. This is where you rapidly shift the frequency of the laser in order to bypass shields. This results in a lower power laser that shatters standard protections and renders its targets vulnerable. The second piece of technology is the ablator, a series of low energy frequencies that lowers the destructive capacity of the lasers in order to avoid inordinate property damage. By combining the two, you can bypass most, if not all, known laser defenses short of having cover or simply dodging the attack. By placing them in a grenade, even those protections are rendered fairly null. What's the use of an ablator? Low-powered ranged weaponry for non-lethal takedowns and disarms. It causes painful but ultimately non-lethal damage on organic targets and massive overheat in standard weapons and armor. Rendering most of them useless. If it's made of metal, it rapidly becomes too hot to hold, and any internal systems are in the red zone if not fried entirely. Now the most important piece is the bandolier. The grenades themselves are easily replaced, but the bandolier is what makes them combat effective. It serves as not just a carrying system, but a charging system and protection from the fallout of the weapon. With it on, you can simply disengage one of the PAGs and drop it at your own feet. It then serves as a flash bomb and a thermal bomb for your opponents, but not yourself. In groups it gets more complicated, but we're finishing up the systems for such things even as we speak," Dr. Samuel explains. "I see. I take it the test dummies down the range are our targets?" he asks. "Yes, sir. That PAG bandolier in particular is attuned to both this room and the second target, so we'll be well protected as you have some fun, and you get a demonstration of the protective aspects of the bandolier," Dr. Samuel states, and Admiral Cistern nods before walking around him. "Very well then. PAG out," Admiral Cistern calls and throws one of the metal balls into the chamber. It bounces once, then lets out a rapid flash of near-blinding light that's met by powerful shields between it and the rest of the room. One of the target dummies is not so lucky, as it's now visibly smoking with a dull red glow emanating from the strapped-on weapons and armor. A red glow that eats through the bindings and causes the pieces to fall to the floor with a clatter. The other target is completely untouched as if nothing had happened. Very interesting. It will certainly get attention, and there's enormous tactical use for such a thing. We'll have to develop a training course, of course, but I can see this being put to use shortly. Now, what of the BPB? This is the one I'm not so sure about, sir. It's ready. It's powerful and it's dangerous. But it's almost impossible to control and is more a weapon of chaos or even full-on terror. We tried to make an area denial tool, effectively landmines that recharge and can be remotely turned off, taking out the disadvantages of the weapon type in that they're normally impossible to reload or retrieve effectively. We pulled that off, but by pursuing an odd quirk, we accidentally made something far, far worse. It's hard to get worse than an indiscriminate weapon with an 80% civilian casualty ratio that has been banned by over 160 countries, but do tell me. Admiral Cistern remarks, and there's a hardness to his features that was much less so just moments prior. Sir, our advancements would have made the landmines easy to remotely disarm by Allied soldiers and retrieved, therefore dispelling the vast majority of both issues. But you then went and made it worse. How? Admiral Cistern will not be dissuaded. It's best if you see for yourself, sir, Dr. Samuel says, picking up the yellow and black toy-looking device. He picks up one of the balls and slots it into the side of the gun. Plasma configuration. Shields to maximum on my mark. He fires the tiny ball out of the device. Mark! The tiny sphere is now contained by force fields so strong they're physically visible as a pale blue glow. Admiral Cistern's eyebrow goes up as the tiny ball that looks more suited for ping-pong sails easily through the air. Then it contacts the far wall and unleashes a plasma explosion that sends it flying to the ceiling. It unleashes another explosion on contact and ricochets to the floor, where it detonates again, slams into one of the target dummies, the untouched one, and explodes again, shattering it. For 5 minutes, Admiral Cistern and Dr. Samuel simply watched the sheer chaos of a single orb endlessly detonating on contact and being hurled from each detonation until it hits something to explode again and again and again. Dear God, this would massacre a small army in close quarters, Admiral Cistern whispers. Yes, sir, Dr. Samuel says shortly. What's going on? Walk me through it? The Admiral's whisper is still easily heard over the cascade of ricochet explosions. While we were experimenting with plasma landmines that could both refuel themselves and be remotely deactivated, we noticed that at certain mixtures the plasma had a very energetic reaction but was very unstable. Many of the mines blasted themselves out of their testing positions, and those that were bolted down still tore at the bolts. We saw the potential for danger, so we explored exactly how much movement these explosions give. Dr. Samuel explains. Before holding up the gun, he launched the bouncing ball of death from and presses the red button. There is a final explosion from the ball, and it simply bounces off the next wall before falling to the floor and lying still. And you found a way to create a self-throwing infinite grenade. Sir, within that sphere is an atmospheric siphon and converter array. The rest of it is nothing but storage space and reinforcement for the sphere. As it sits there, it sucks in atmosphere and converts it to volatile plasma, so volatile that an impact will set it off. The resulting explosion sends the ball flying and into fresh atmosphere, where it starts creating more plasma. Then it hits something else, and the process repeats until it simply can't go anywhere and therefore no new impacts, or if it runs out of atmosphere. And the red button? Admiral Cistern asks. It deactivates all such arrays within a fairly large area. Sir, when we set out to see if this property of plasma could be weaponized, we never thought we'd get this far. We continued due to the philosophy that something understood will never be as dangerous as something misunderstood. We just didn't think we'd be making the next big war crime. That's the unfortunate truth of weapon research. Unless you hit exactly your target, you're never happy. Too small a result and it's useless, too grand a result and it's dangerous. Admiral Cistern states before thinking, "Have you been able to properly measure the explosions?" "We have. The concussive and thermal forces together make this a weapon to be feared. I suspect it will soon join the endless barrage in the galaxy for tools of war that are simply illegal. Please tell me that the information for these atrocities are not accessible from the outside." "Sir, I disabled the cameras before I unboxed the sample here. We've erased every record of them that are not on secluded servers, and there are no copies allowed. We know we messed up and made a weapon of terror, and we're giving it all the gravitas that it deserves." "You're much less enthusiastic for the BPB than you were when I first walked in." Being reminded at just how dangerous it is does that, sir. Unfortunately, I can already imagine several uses for this weapon. Even if we can't deactivate them normally, it's still far too useful as a mass destruction and area denial weapon to fully discard. With our ability to deactivate it, it's of incredible use in taking hostile spaceships with boarding actions. This is a weapon that turns an enemy hardpoint or bunker against them entirely. Enemy fortifications will become the walls of their tombs. Admiral Cistern takes a moment and is fully composed once more. "Excellent job, Dr. Samuel. Convey my compliments to the rest of the research department, will you? Also, do endeavor to keep the BPB under as heavy a wrap as possible. I want this to be a secret as long as we can manage it." "Yes, sir," Dr. Samuel says and salutes as the Admiral turns and leaves the room.